Yeah, I know. In the meantime, I'm going to bring up so I can see what everybody else is seeing. Sorry about that.
No, it's not your fault. I just don't know hell what's going on. Say live now. I see a picture of you looking like a caveman. I just click on here. Let's try clicking on here. All right, I see you.
Now you're going to get the feedback from maybe mute on your end. Back from.
Yeah, I went ahead and pulled that off.
Okay, let's see.
I'm just gonna hang this up.
All right, everybody. Sorry about that. We are experiencing. Sorry about that, everybody. We're experiencing some technical difficulties. In the chat, I'm sending a link to the Hangout. Hey, Liam. Sorry about that. Hey, I don't know what happened here. I'm in the middle of trying to do a YouTube live stream, so I'm going to drop off here. So sorry about that. All right.
Hey.
Hey, Mike. There you are.
Well, that was easy.
Man, things got crazy there. As soon as you left the Instagram live chat, I was in the middle of live chatting another Instagram follower that I don't know if it. I don't know. It's like butt dialing. So that's how I know I'm getting older. Is technology I'm really starting to struggle with. So, and I was like, why is my pocket talking to me again? So.
Okay. So I think I've sorted most of this out. I had to shut down my YouTube page because I was getting double feedback, and now we're good, I think.
Awesome. Well, we have let's see, try to get 5 people in here now, so that's good. So I guess what I'll do is I'll go ahead and do the formal start here in a second, and maybe let a couple more people jump in, but then we'll get rolling. So
sounds good. So the audio is okay on your end?
Yep, I can hear you great. Can you hear me okay?
Uh-oh. Yeah, I can hear you just fine.
Okay, good. All right, well, welcome everybody to the live stream. My name is Grant Tommy. This is my channel, Straight Six Fin, where I like to focus on offbeat hot rodding, as I define as budget-minded, relatable, creative builds. And as you know, this is my series, Know Your Neighbors, where I like to highlight a different YouTube channel out there for car guys alike, to help you guys get to find some new exposure, just new programs, new new channels and whatnot. And this is usually where I would drop in the little intro music, but it appears I've let that slide up. Oh, here we go. I accidentally closed it, but amateur. There we go. Well, my next guest for the 9th installment of Know Your Neighbors is the official channel name is Monkey Fabrication Garage, but he likes to introduce himself as Mike with Monkey Fab. Michael Hennessy. Michael, welcome to the show.
Hey, Grant.
Hey, Michael.
Happy New Year to you and your family.
Yeah, Happy New Year to you as well. I hope
everybody else out there.
Exactly. Hopefully 2018 wasn't a disaster for anybody, but if it was, new beginnings, and get a clean slate today. So
if you're a car guy, I think you always stay in disaster mode for the most part, right?
Yeah. I'm battling thermostat housing water neck. This will be my 3rd try here.
I've seen that.
I think today, if I can get it yanked off today, I'm gonna see if I can just take it to a machine shop. I don't know if it's quite flat. I don't know. I can't figure out anything at this point. But
right.
Well,
Is
Michael,
it just a ceiling issue?
yeah. Well, the first time, I don't know if you watched my one video.
I saw you break it.
Yeah, there was that, and then
Yeah.
the cheap replacement one I had fell down. So this time I bought a better one, that's more tolerant, better tolerances that actually fit the opening better, and I even RTV'd that to the housing so it like wouldn't slip at all. And it's still I can kind of tell exactly where it's coming from a little bit better this go around. But
Yeah, it's part of the deal with finding those like 30-year-old parts that are still made to fit stuff. It's always it's a bit iffy sometimes. I get that with my Pontiac all the time. Trying to find a stuff for a 40-year-old car.
yeah, it's amazing. As you turn each year, sometimes you just blink and you're like, I mean, like a 1970 Chevelle pretty soon is going to be a 50-year-old car, and that's like hard for me to wrap my head around. But yeah, it's
Yeah. I actually rambled on about that in one of my videos. I was thinking, when I was a kid back in like the 80s, a 57 Chevy was like, wow, look at this thing. It's ancient, it's cool. And I was like, but that was only, 20 something years old. And now we go back 20 years and you're talking about like, late 90s, mid 90s, well, my Volvo wagon's 93 and it's 25 years old, going on 26 years old now.
yeah, yeah, and I'm an 80s kid, and so I grew up like my dad, probably similar to your age. I mean, he's probably older actually, but he was always telling the stories about how his friends who had, it was right in the heat of the muscle car era, and so that's always. I remember as a kid, like my older cousins were buying Mustangs to fix up and thinking, yeah, that's what I want to do. But yeah, man, that's
right.
Cars now.
A 20-year-old Mustang you can pick up pretty cheap now.
Yeah. Well, Mike, I wanted to get started with this interview in saying that I know you from your YouTube channel first, of course, but I'm actually guessing that actually a personal business came first before the YouTube channel, Monkey Fabrication Garage. So tell us a little bit about your business and your website, and what do you do at Monkey Fabrication Garage?
Sure, man. Well, I was in the Army. I joined the Army when I was like 17 back in 1990, and did that for two decades plus. And I was always like into cars. You could never afford cars because I was in the Army. But basically, I got to a point where I was, I was buying stuff that I was like, man, I could just make this if I had the right machine. It was maybe during the early days of Torchmate before they merged with Lincoln, and they put out a package that was like $2,000, I think, for a plasma cutter. It was like a 2 foot by 2 foot, and I was like, man, I know it's like that to me. That was a significant amount of money at the time. Do I need to kill the gain on the microphone? Is it killing you?
No, I'm good. Are you feedback?
No, not at all. I put the headphones in. I just want to make sure I'm not beating you up with.
Oh, you're good. I've got them over here, and I'm trying to keep my.
Yeah. So long story short, I invested in that plasma cutter, and so I could, every time I need a flange or something for a car, it would cost $20 plus shipping, etc. So it eventually kind of started paying for itself. And then I had some friends on Facebook just reach out and be like, hey, can you do this? Can you do that? And that's when I actually, one of my friends, Sam, up in Missouri, he's about around the St. Louis area, wanted an exhaust ring made. And I was like, yeah, I can do that. And then I realized like, hey, I can turn this into a business, start making stuff and selling it online. So and I was getting ready to leave the Army. I was at that point where I was too broken to play anymore. It's kind of a young man sport. And so I was like, no one's going to hire me. I'm basically like, a knuckle dragger. So maybe I need to figure out what I'm going to do when I get out of the Army. So yeah, I just started a website. My wife was kind of good with technology, much better than me. And we just, she got the website started for me and started posting stuff up using social media kind of to push that. out into the public eye, and that's been pretty good for me. I've been real lucky with that.
Well, I wanted to pick your brain a little bit more on what you mean by stuff, but before I do so, I kind of just wanted to drop in and say hi to some of the people in the chat. Mr. Mach 1, Doug Sweener, Farm All Fanatic, Pappy's Corner, Space Rag, MHF Tractor, and it looks like VF555 Fodia, who I don't know, so the new person in the chat, so that's exciting. Cool. And I also apologize if I said that wrong. But and then Farm All Fanatic looks like he's seconding what you're saying, talking about the infantry division as well. But Mike, you talked about stuff. So the stuff for your website, I am a little bit familiar with your stuff. Right. TIG welding, and is it?
Well, I should plug my business since I got you here doing the stuff. But go over to Monkey Fab Garage. Anybody that's interested, it's just monkeyfabgarage.com, and basically I do a lot of social media stuff. I'm really big into anything to do with like podcasts and that kind of thing. And I was listening to a podcast and it said like, hey, if you want to start a business and you want to make products that people want, then you need to solve problems. And that's kind of the approach I took to it, was like, what can I do that would help the end user out on his side where it might be more difficult. So like a turbo collector, I sell a lot of those. It's very popular, T6 turbos, T4 turbo stuff, mostly for the V8 crowd, but it's just making those collectors. So, and again, it's all based off of social media. One of my friends reached out to me because I was making some for myself, I believe, and he said like, hey, you should make those. And I was like, I don't want to make those. It sucks to make those. And he's like, exactly. So I've gotten real good at making turbo collectors, all kinds of little pieces and parts that basically what I do is I'll work on my own car, and as I run into something, or if I find a product that I'm like, man, I really like this, I'll try to figure out how do I get this on my store. And that's what I've been doing. I'd eventually kind of like to get to where I'm just kind of retailing products to people that they need, and push the fabrication stuff maybe to an employee. Like right now I'm doing everything myself, and that can be difficult in the fact that everything is dependent on me, and it's time consuming and it's constant. So I'd like to, it's hard, honestly, it's hard to find people that want to learn and are interested in kind of putting in the work, I guess, to develop that. And that's a tough thing across any kind of car fabrication. Anybody that runs a car fabrication type business will tell you the same thing. It's tough to find people and it's tough to keep people. And that's part of just the business of it, I think. I think I went on a tangent. So what I also sell is welding supplies, just because that's something I do. I make videos on it, and I thought like, hey, I'm making videos on this stuff. Why not, give people the stuff that they need and just stock the stuff that people actually need instead of everything where people go to a website on welding and just get lost. Which if you've ever done any welding, you find it's pretty easy to get down that rabbit hole.
Well, you kind of set me up great for my next question, but I did want to follow up on some of the things you did say. I mean, it is a struggle when you're building something from the ground up, and you got to weigh that growth versus the quality control with what you want to be putting out. And so I definitely understand the struggle of that thought of, you should probably be hiring someone, but it's like, you're at that perfect breaking point to do so. And then, like you said, if the people who struggle with wanting to do the work or to learn, if they don't grow as well and want to kind of spin off or go do something else, then you've probably hired the wrong person. I mean, I relate it to big college football junkie, and so it's always like, you hate when the assistant coach leaves to go take a head coaching job somewhere else, but that actually means you hired the right person at that time. Yes, for your coaching staff, you got to figure out how to replace and mentor and do all that thing, but that's just how it works, and that's the right way to do it. But you talked a little bit about trying to find someone to do the work to take over and help you grow. But since it is a lot of TIG welding, and that's something that I'm a fan of, but not very good at, what I'd like to ask you is, what is one of the things that you wished you would have learned sooner than you had when it comes to TIG welding, or maybe a little tip or trick or something when you're first starting out that you wished you would have learned sooner?
I think the first thing that you want to tell somebody, number one, is I'm getting a little bit of feedback. I'm not sure where that's coming from. Is that better? Let's see. Okay, but anyway, so the number one thing that I would tell anybody is it's not the machine, it's you. And I know that's a tough pill to swallow, but it's 100% true. Like if you get a welding machine that will weld, then you can just stop right there. A lot of people will they'll see they'll go over to Instagram, right? Because that's like the purveyor of weld porn. And they'll go, oh, okay, they'll see this guy and they'll be like, man, this, I do the same thing. I watch all the other welders out there and watch what they're doing. And sometimes I'm just amazed. I just sit back, scratch my head, and I think, how are they pulling that off? And but the honest answer is practice. They just sit there and they I'm sure if you're into welding, you've heard of Dabs Wellington, and Dabs he'll weld for fun. I've seen him just sit there and just do beads and weld stuff together, and every time you're doing that, you're learning. So that's like number one is get a machine that works, and then teach yourself how to weld. Don't spend a lot of time tricking yourself into, oh, if I only had this, if I only had that, or if I could find the right settings. Forget all that. Just put on straight amps and just weld. Just keep welding.
Yeah, that's the hardest one to remind yourself of. It just because it's hard for me to go out and practice without purpose. So I always feel like I have to be building something. But then I also realize when I am trying to do something and pull it off right, I'm not. I don't have enough practice time. So that's really good advice.
Right.
So
that's a conundrum that you fall into. I mean, you can't just, metal's expensive. I mean, I often tell a story about the first time I went to St. Louis to buy metal, and I spent I had like $200 worth of metal, which wasn't really a lot when you're talking stainless steel and aluminum, and it hurt. Like that was all the extra money I had that month. And but I was like, invest it in yourself, make stuff, sell it. And that's what I did, is just make stuff that I could figure out, sell it to people for what I thought was a reasonable price for my skill level, and just reinvest that money. Now I buy metal well over $1,000, at a load. I buy a load of metal, because the more you buy it, the cheaper it gets, because they sell it by weight. But yeah, do the best you can with what you got. Pay attention to everything that you do and how everything you do affects it. There's no mailing it in when it comes to making nice welds. You have to concentrate, pay attention to all the fine details. I have a whole series for anybody that wants to learn. If you just go to my YouTube channel, it is how to TIG weld. There's a whole playlist, and it starts with how do I buy a machine, to stacking dimes on thin wall stainless and thin wall aluminum, and everything that's in between that.
Yeah, I maybe knew that at one point in time, but I think I've been following your Phoenix build for so long, I'd forgotten that you'd actually do have TIG welding instructional videos. Of course, Classic Ride Society mentioned in the comments or the chat about welding tips and tricks. I think most of us are familiar.
Oh yeah, I mean, that's how I learned.
Yeah, Kane Kid's another good follow on Instagram. But as well,
61.
Yeah,
he's
61.
Yeah.
And Texas Viking, if he's runs around in these circles as well, is another good one.
Right. I'm having a brain fart right now, and I'm kind of afraid to do this, but let me.
That's all right. In the middle,
I'll let you.
Yeah.
And I'm gonna hook up there's a guy I have to mention, because he does such great stuff, and he's kind of not really well known. And I know him by name, but it's Fifth Street Fab. He's on YouTube, and he's kind of a smaller. He just did a welding video on TIG welding aluminum and the settings. and that's what he really does. Is his job is weld aluminum all day long, and it's worth your time if you're trying to learn to go check his channel out. He's sent me a bunch of followers, and I'd like to return the favor.
That's a really good. I mean, I wrote it down because I'll have to
Just
check
Street
it out.
Fab.
Street Fab. Well, one of the things I wanted to touch on a little bit, you talked about that getting caught up in the gear versus experience thing, and I agree with you. Experience is much better than gear. However, I do want to speak a little bit towards the gear side. In sometimes gear, and I'll make a specific example about what I'm trying to say. For instance, for Christmas, I just picked up one of those Eastwood tungsten grinders for my, and it's like if you have to buy something to protect yourself against like bad practice, then maybe gear's worth it, because like I was just using a mini grinder and abrasive wheel, and I wasn't getting the best grinds, because tungsten's really winning that battle against my abrasive wheel. Like sometimes there's a case for gear can make you better, but it also is just stop being lazy, like.
So when I first got to Houston, I went to work at a fab shop in town called Aldo Welds, and he does amazing work. He's putting the new Mustangs in like the low 8s, and I won't be surprised if he puts them in the 7s. But he's a master welder, and he still sharpens his tungsten on his belt sander. So and his machine is this like thing from the 70s. It's just like this big transformer miller, and his welds are like top 1% type welds that he does. And I think that was like walking in there and seeing that and being like, well, it's just not. It's about the skill. There's things that are going to help you out, but there's nothing that will replace the actual time behind the mask or whatever you want to say.
Right. And it's like, I mean, like the analogy for a paint job, the best paint job, it's dependent on your prep work. And the same thing goes for TIG welding.
That's so true.
Spend your time prepping the weld, which I'm, because I started in arc welding, and so I'm used to just blowing by anything dirty as heck.
Right.
So I have to remind myself, no, just, right. I know you wanted to like get on it now, but no, just take the extra time. So
right.
But I wanted to talk a little bit about, of course, the Phoenix build. But before we get all the way to that, so what then possessed you, Mike, to start the YouTube channel after building the business?
Right. That's funny. So I met Matt Happel. I'm sure you know Sloppy Mechanics.
Yeah. Oh, yeah. Yep.
Yeah. So I met Matt kind of like we were already Facebook friends. I didn't know about Sloppy Mechanics at the time, and his wife won one of the giveaways that I was doing to kind of grow my Facebook page on Monkey Fab. And Jamie is her name. They got a cute little kid named Dylan now. But anyway, so I met Matt kind of through her, and just kind of been a big supporter of what he does. I after I got to know him, and I actually went to his YouTube channel, checked it out, and I was like, oh yeah, this is just a massive wealth of knowledge that the guy's just giving away. And I appreciate that. Like, there's no secrets, there's no voodoo. It's just out in the open. Here's, all the information you can take, and you're drinking from a fire hose. So yeah, Matt, I think I just kind of said like, hey, why not do this? I've seen what Matt's doing. It's kind of cool. And it'd be a good way to promote my business. And it also holds me accountable. So like, I think I'm okay to let the Phoenix just sit on the lift for the next decade. Totally cool with that. But it's really held me to account. Like, I give myself these made up responsibilities, and then I am able to kind of guilt myself into thinking like, hey, you need to go work on the car so you can post up some stuff because of all 3 of your subscribers are interested in it. And so maybe it's a way of holding my feet to the fire. And advertising. I'm really good at marketing.
Well, you said all 3 of your subscribers. Last I checked, you were at 3.3 thousand subscribers. So that was it's the number of 3s. Definitely your number.
YouTube is an interesting platform. I could start a channel on Facebook and have 10,000 followers, within a year. It's not terribly difficult. YouTube is completely different. It's really, it's a difficult platform to grow. I think there's zero reward. I think you'll occasionally get a, hey, good job, but most of the comments you get are just, you suck. I wish you would die.
Yeah, you did great work for 7 out of the 8 steps, but the 1-8 one I take real issue with, and I'm gonna make you.
Yeah, you definitely have a lot of experts critiquing your work, and feeling free to provide their expert feedback to you.
And it's usually like one of those things where it's like, I love my sports analogies, but it's like someone's trying to critique how someone should mentally prep themselves for a free throw. Everybody, basketball players got some weird quirk that they do, and it's just to clear their head to shoot the free throw. But that one comment that the person has issue with you, like doing wrong, was just like a personal comfort thing. It's like, oh, that's cool, but this is just the way I do it to, like we got to the end goal the same. I'm sorry that it's not the same that you do, but it's just a personal quirk, It's not like a real technique is usually what the people are picking at.
Right. Yeah. Yeah. You'd say so I think it's human nature to number one is we say things on social media that we never say to somebody's face. Right. And then you got to figure who's commenting. It's probably the bottom 1%. So I try not to let it bother me. As a human, of course, you're going to read stuff and it's going to just it'll have whatever effect it has. But yeah, I mean, for the most part, it's positive, and you got to figure if somebody watches your video and they didn't say anything, then hopefully they enjoyed it, and hopefully you gave them something that was of value.
Yeah. Yeah. Well, and this is all a good conversation. I keep pushing off the Phoenix questions. But yeah, so let's talk a little bit about YouTube growth, because Classic Ride Society kind of echoed what you said in the chat, that he built a Facebook page much faster, easier, bigger than YouTube. What would you have found maybe one of your best growth strategies to date? Because I think we're all in this together. We all kind of have something going on, and so I'm just curious what you found that works best on the YouTube.
Right. I think the biggest thing is what we're doing now is so on social media, if let's say you're on Instagram or you're on Facebook, you have a mindset, and whatever mindset is in that app, it carries that app. So you can post a video on your Facebook, but people are not in Facebook for a 40-minute or 30-minute video. They're just next. So the only place a platform is easily, I think, shared or extrapolated is within that platform. So you having me on your YouTube channel is going to get me viewers. Somebody's going to subscribe today to my channel because you have me on, and I don't know if there's reciprocity. Hopefully they can see me, my followers, and they'll subscribe to you as well. Fifth Street Fab was doing a video on just YouTubers he enjoyed watching, and he mentioned my name, and I picked up 100+ viewers or subscribers just off of a mention. So I think that's the easiest way, is when somebody mentions you on the platform specifically, and then somebody goes, hey, I want to go check that out. Yeah,
that's so it's for my longtime followers. They know the guy who got me into the business, as you might say, is Greg's Garage. He's a coworker of mine, and he and I were talking just a week or so ago about the same thing. And he said, and he has 40,000+ subscribers, maybe 50,000 now. And he was saying it's really one of those things that it's just, you find those people who blow up overnight, and it's because somebody else who was already big found them and really promoted them.
Yeah. So I'm sorry, go ahead.
Oh, no, I was essentially.
So I was just going to bitch a little bit. So, right. So, I mean, you put hours into this. I know personally, I probably, spend a couple hours to edit each video, go through, render it, all that stuff. And, I probably have, hundreds of videos up now, I would guess. So that's just, it's probably thousands of hours of work, I would guess. I don't know. But then you're watching Cletus and he decides to make a YouTube channel for his dog pooping, and you click on it and it's got more subscribers than you have in like your year's work, you know, and you're like, oh man, that's a real way to put your nose in it, you know, forgive the pun.
Well, and one thing I want to say is that I try to I have to remind myself of it even as well, but we're all on different paces. It's like running a marathon. Like nobody's like, unless you're in that top 5%, you're not going to finish. Like everybody's got a totally different rate than somebody else, you know?
Sure.
So one question that came in from the chat, and I kind of know where I'd like to go with it, but I'll throw it your way, Mike, was about for a first timer, what's better to learn, arc welding or MIG welding? Because it looks like VF 555 Fodia, and again, if I'm butchering that name, sorry, is sort of asking. He only has 120 power at the moment, but he's kind of looks like he's thinking about 2019 might be his year to pull the trigger and buying a machine.
Yeah. So one caveat to power is I want to touch on, because your welder is only going to be as good as the power source. So a lot of times people will buy, you know, a MIG welder and they'll plug it into their wall, you know, and it's got, you know, tiny gauge wire. It's maybe 10 amps, 15 amps, and it's not giving the machine the power it needs. So that's very important to consider in any, it doesn't matter if it's 120, 220, like I run, I think a 40 or 50 amp breaker to my machine, just let it eat. And, you know, I think 8 gauge wire is what I have on it. There's a video showing it, but so that's important. Honestly, the easiest welding you can do is TIG welding. But it's like it's a paradox. Like you can control a TIG welder so finely down to as low as the amps of the machine will go. So I can start a puddle, I can move it wherever I need it. I can add whatever metal into the puddle I need to do whatever I need to do with. While the other methods like arc welding, I've never done, so I'm just assuming a lot of this stuff. But MIG welding, I know for sure. It's just you pull a trigger and it's on. You know, like, baby, we're going. And if it gets hot, you blow a hole, and you start kind of getting into trouble. So my favorite welding to do, and I've had people like, you know, shit post me on this, is like, do you ever MIG weld? Well, yeah, I have a MIG welder. How bad is my MIG weld? It's really bad. So this is my MIG welding machine got stolen when I moved to Houston. My storage unit got broken into and all my stuff got stolen. So I had to buy a new one. And I specifically went and got the new Miller that has like the auto, like you just turn it to whatever gauge metal you want to weld and set it auto, because I'm that bad at setting up the MIG welder. I'm just like, well, maybe the machine will do a better job than I do. And that's what my MIG weld with. And I only do it when I have a lot of welding to do, and it just needs to be fast. So that's a long answer to a short question. The answer is go buy a cheap TIG welder that's good, and you'll be happy.
Well, I'll second that a little bit in the fact that you know, it's sort of like, so my job, I'm an architect, and somehow we get lumped in at the tail end of like, there's like doctors, lawyers, engineers, and then for some reason people throw architects in that. So everybody thinks like we're on the same plane. Like I make as much money as a doctor or a lawyer, and I don't. But similarly, for some reason, TIG welding gets ranked as like, oh, that's the most advanced, toughest. Don't touch that. But I will say that my coworker Greg, again from Greg's Garage, he told me so I bought an Everlast 3-in-1 machine. So it's a plasma cutter, arc welder, TIG welder. For as small as my garage is, I couldn't pass up that value when I wanted to upgrade my welder. But he told me, he said, when you start TIG welding, you'll find it slows the process down. And so a lot of principles of what welding is, it's just like, you know, developing that puddle, holding an arc. Like TIG welding really is, in a way, almost like you said, it's this paradox thing. Like in a way, it's a lot. Yes, you have to have somewhat skills before you just jump in, but it teaches you so much more, because like Greg said, it slows the process down. And I think TIG welding eventually is going to make me a better arc welder because of it. And I don't own a MIG welder either, just because it's a space thing at this moment. Someday I will probably buy one, but I
did without one for a good year and a half. And that's what I do is fab work. So
yeah. Yeah, I feel like I can cover. I mean, if anything from sheet metal with the TIG welder up to heavy steel, I've got an arc welder for. But
Yeah.
someday. All right, so it finally is time to talk a little Phoenix and Classic Ride Society. If you don't follow Mike, he's a kind of a junkyard guy.
I'm pretty sure I do.
Up in DFW. He said he ran into a 77 Phoenix in the yard the other day. So if you need any special parts to make that thing to finish it off, I know you're kind of in the walk away from it for a bit category, but tell us what and I have a basic understanding from following your channel about what the Phoenix project is, what you wanted it to be, but tell us a little bit about well, A, what possessed you to build a Phoenix, but maybe it's somewhat related to B, what's the history behind your Phoenix?
Yeah, sure. So I'm trying to get this camera right. Suddenly it's bugging me. It looks like I'm looking down all the time, but it's because my camera's sitting on top and I have to look at it. Okay, so yeah, Phoenix. So when I got out of the Army, I didn't know what the hell I was going to do because I did Army for like 25 years. So luckily, so everybody should join the Army. Go join the Army. It's awesome. But one of the benefits, the massive benefits of the Army, besides, it's just the education. They will pay every year for you to get I think it's 12 credit hours.
Wow.
So yeah. So you can do that in your part-time, which I didn't do because I'm retarded. I did some, so don't want to completely write myself off. But when I got done, then you get the GI Bill, which they pay for your college completely up to a point. And then they also pay you a stipend to live. So it's very generous. So if you have kids or you yourself are wondering hey, life isn't going how it should be, maybe go talk to your Army recruiter. My old boss happens to be the head of recruiting command now. And she was an amazing mentor. But anyway, so yeah, get out, go to Samtech. There's no short stories with me. Go to Samtech, which is a school of automotive machinists, which is here in Houston. And what they specialize is in how to build engines. They're basically engine block preparation for high horsepower stuff, all the theory behind it. Cylinder head porting, tuning, CNC machining. So they have a full CNC deal there, and they're trying to add fabrication. They keep asking me to come consider the job, but I like monkey fab. Anyway, so this kid rolls in. He's from Nebraska in this total shit box 70s clunker with a 305 that is blowing smoke out, and it was just pristine. And I was like, oh my God, it's gorgeous. I need to buy your car. And he was like, I'll never sell it. So I was like, cool. So every time I saw the kid, I was like, I want to buy this car. And he was like, nope. And then come tax time, he bought a Trans Am, like a 2000 Trans Am. And I was like, bro, I'd been working on an engine, and I had all these crankshafts, pistons, rods, block. Maybe he had the crankshaft, I can't remember, but a full valve train from John Bewley at Little John's Motorsports. And I was like, how about I just give you all the stuff to go in your new Firebird and you give me that car? And that worked. So I paid way too much. I found the receipt where the guy actually bought the car, and he paid $300 for it. I probably gave him $3-4 grand worth of stuff to get the car. But my mom had a Plymouth Volare station wagon when I was a kid. I don't know if that rings a bell.
I've got a sketch. I wish I had my sketchbook. I'd throw it on the screen right now. But
okay, yeah. So that was my high school bomber. Was this huge, horrible, embarrassing station wagon. And when I saw the Phoenix, it kind of just took me right back. And I was like, yeah, that's going to be my project.
Well, the Chevy X body, if I'm not mistaken. So my brother has a 77 Nova, and I was actually, when I started following your build, I was like, I'd never heard of the Phoenix. I was used to this acronym. I think it was in a Carcraft magazine where the X body's you could spell out the acronym NOVA and get all of the nameplates right. So the Chevy Nova, the Oldsmobile Omega, the Ventura, and then the Apollo. And so I was like, that's not in the Nova. Like, where's this Phoenix coming from? But
where did it come from? It's the P factor.
Yes, nobody told me about this. I'm like this street smarts. I like to think I'm a book smarts muscle car guy, but not the street smarts guy. I don't have those skills yet. Working on that. But so tell us then a little bit about what were your master plans for the Phoenix, or what was your approach to the build?
So it came with a 305 in it with a 350 transmission, and I was pretty happy. I mean, the air conditioning kind of worked, so it was kind of decent, and it only had 40,000 miles on it, and it's pristine. If anybody's seen it, it's like there's hardly any body dings, no rust. So the story was it was some old ladies, and she just parked it, and when she passed away, she like drive it once a year, and when she passed away, everybody's got a story for the car. So it smoked, so it literally leaked from every gasket on the car, which you'd expect, and it wasn't really that big of a deal. But you get on the freeway and drive, so everything would cool down, so the oil would just be pouring all over the engine, and then when you get off the freeway, the manifolds would start warming back up, and literally smoke would just be, and you get that look of disgust from everybody on the road, like, he's just killing our planet. So,
or keeping the Houston area oil guys in business.
Right, absolutely. So I wanted to just replace it. I was like, well, I'll just do like a 5-3 swap on it. And I think I got guilted by Happel, because he's always posting these shit memes. So I don't know if you follow Sloppy, but Matt just posts up these just memes that just like, and I think one of them was like, I think it was like, maybe it was like all motor, all disappointment, or something like that. And I was like, it's just laziness if I'm a fabricator guy to not turbocharge this thing. So we'll just do it and make a YouTube thing out of it, and it'll be entertaining. So yeah, now it's got a aluminum 5.3 that I bought with the transmission for super cheap, like $500 for 4L80E and a L33. It's got a 78-75 billet VS racing turbo from from Varin VS Racing, and so I got that in running. There's rod knock, pulled it, and it's just like everything's going wrong is where I'm at. It's normal car guy stuff, right?
Yeah, but you have to take that, like it's that psychological. You got to take that time out, or you got to go to the sidelines and cool off, because it's like you think that it only happens to you, and if it's going to happen, I mean, it's like. I don't really want to touch that thermostat housing on the Fairmont for a while, but I think mentally
I'll just jiggle it, see what happens. Snap.
Yeah. No, remind me. So I know Sloppy Mechanics sound. He's the guy who puts LS motors in Fairmonts. Is that the guy?
Yeah.
Okay, yeah, that's what I thought. Yeah.
If you guys don't know Sloppy, you need to get over there and check him out. Well, the cool thing about Matt is like he'll just do so he has his own dyno. He doesn't really have his own dyno, but it's a long story. He has access to a dyno at will, from what I understand. So he'll do something and dyno it. So you get that instant feedback, which is it's pretty interesting. So I think one of his favorite builds was he did a Colorado. He bought a bombed out Colorado and swapped it with a 6-liter first, on a quest for 1,000 horsepower, and it's just everything he does going along, and you get to see it blow up several times, and him finally reaches 1,000 horsepower. So I think that's an interesting format to have a dyno, right?
Yeah, well, so the other part is he's one of those guys who, from the limited exposure I've had to him, he definitely enjoys the journey more than the destination. Where I mean, as soon as he puts those things together, he wants to start on the next project, which I think there's something to that. And which, I mean, that's kind of what I want to get to a point with until I get moved to a bigger house, bigger shop. Like the Fairmont project, I've been pretty transparent about. I don't really want to keep it. I mean, it's a nice car. Like I definitely could keep myself, but sort of protecting myself against myself from dumping way too much money into it.
That's what I do. I just go out and buy enough that all my garages are filled up, and then I can't buy anymore. So I know I'm good.
Well, so then let's talk a little bit about post Phoenix. I know you did a video not all too long ago trying to lay out. You thought you had your two Volvos. You have Green Go and another one, and the more you kind of put some thought to, it's like, you know what? Maybe this isn't the best platform. What's next on the docket? What's the next build?
Well, I just got with the Phoenix, I got it together and running, and it had the stock drivetrain in it. So I basically just swapped the engine, if that makes sense, because it bolts right too. And that worked okay, but you could tell the 40-year-old TH350 was not loving it. So I bought a Mustang rear axle for it, and a TH400 for it. So to beef up the drivetrain to go along with probably the 600-700 horsepower it's going to make. Did that. Then I rod knocked it. It turned out the rod was already knocking beforehand, but so I had to pull the engine, get it back together, and then when I did that, I smoked the transmission because I was trying to keep the column shifter, and the column shifter had so much slop in it, it wasn't really getting into gear. It was like halfway hanging to gear, and it did some bad transmission voodoo, and had to get the transmission rebuilt. So it's back now. When I did that, I dropped off the 4L80 I bought, and I have a 6-liter that I have fully machined and ready to go. It's like an aluminum 6-liter, and that'll be ready. So I'm kind of waiting on the transmission, and then I'm trying to wrap up the Phoenix. So the school, I've cooperated with those guys, and they're going to do the dyno on it once I get it back together and running. So that should be a fun wrap up to most of that project. I mean, it'll probably go on for some time, but it's like piecemeal. It was like everybody's project. It's never finished. So yeah, I have a 93 Volvo wagon. You can go to my channel and check it out. It's like totally clean. I bought it from the original owner. And it has maybe 60 horsepower, I would guess, on a good day. Like I will bet money, like it can't get out of its own. Like I saw one of my favorite memes is like it's like one of the SpongeBob things, and he's got like a pet rock, and it says like trying to get your Volvo to accelerate, and it's like, it's okay, Rocky, you go when you want to go. It's so bad, but the chassis is excellent. I mean, I just drove it to Dallas, which is 500-mile round trip, and it was great. And yeah, so we're gonna put a 6-liter and a 4L80 in that, and it should be done. No turbos, no problems.
Just a clean street build.
Just enough to go from 0 to 60 in something under a minute. Yeah.
Well, I mean, how else does Volvo keep their great safety ratings if it's going to go?
Well, their traction control, I can tell you, is just they put so little horsepower in it that you don't have to worry. Nothing's going to spin.
Oh, that's great. Well, Mike, I'm out of questions myself. I did want to open it up to the live chat. If anybody's got a question for Mike or myself, feel free to drop it in the comments. But certainly appreciate the time. You carving some time out on New Year's Day to do this.
Let's ask you what's the plans for the Fairmont?
Well, so after I get this dang radiator, it's been like a 2-month project now. After that's done, I think a sending unit needs to be replaced. So then I've got all of the little knickknack things done, and it's ready to start having fun. So I've got sitting in my garage, I have a 8.8 rear end out of a Lincoln Mark 7. So it's got rear discs on it. It's got traction lock. It's got 327 gears, which will be a huge upgrade for my 273s.
Right,
and
the Phoenix had.
Yeah,
it would literally do like 75 in first gear.
Yeah, actually, I think they might even be lower than. I have to think about that. They might even be or higher, lower number, higher gears.
Right.
Two. They might even be. I don't know.
1. Just a 1-to-1.
But I'll be doing a 5-lug swap with that, and I've got some 17-inch steel wheels off of a new model Dodge Charger that I'll be putting on there. So there'll be some brake, new proportioning valve work and that kind of stuff. All new stuff, things I have no idea how to do, but it's part of the gig. And then I keep getting the most controversial thing, which I think is what I need for YouTube.
What kind of transmission is on the back of that?
It's a C4.
Okay.
So, yeah, C4. Yeah, right. A lot of people, I guess those had C3s, again, something I'd never even heard of. But mine actually, if you've watched through all my videos, it's got immaculate like door tags. I found the build sheet under the
it looks beautiful
passenger seat. So I've been able to figure this all out, and so it actually does have a C4, which not the best transmission at all, but again, this is meant to be a budget build, something that I can have fun with, for like a summer and then sell it. But I want to do a head swap. I've got some GT40 heads that everybody tries to talk me out of this. I probably overpaid for them. I understand that, but I wanted to go beyond.
Hey. Sorry, my dog was talking.
Oh, that's okay. I was wondering where the noise is coming from. I was trying to.
It wasn't me.
If I threw it, well, it sounded like a phone vibrating actually, and I was like, trying to
the pit bull going off.
The old pit bull going off trip. But yeah, I want to do the head swap just because I want to go past the normal bolt-ons of an intake manifold and carb and headers. I wanted to just challenge myself to learn some skills, learn some things that I don't know how to do.
I was kind of there with the Volvo. Like the engine's in good shape, and I know they turbocharge, like they have turbo varieties of those, and I was kind of half in it to like maybe I'll just throw a turbocharger on this thing and hook up a micro squirt and see what it would do. I realized like it'd be a total waste of time at this point to kind of go down that route. But if your route is just fun, then why not?
Yeah, and then I'll probably port the intake manifold a little bit to match the heads. But I want to build a sleeper, but it won't be a true sleeper because it probably still won't make enough horsepower to.
There's always nitrous.
Yeah, well, that's true.
There's always direct port nitrous. So
that's true. Yeah. But I figure, if I could paint these heads back blue, get the factory valve covers back on it, people pop the hood, see a 2-barrel carb. I'll disconnect a lot of the emissions stuff too. But the worst part about this motor, it came from the factory with like 7.8 to 1 compression. So like the biggest issue with the motor is not making enough compression. So
that's what nitrous is for. Right.
Am I gonna get random messages like you're gonna schedule them? Don't forget about nitrous.
100 shot. We'll get that thing moving.
Well,
you got to break it. I don't know that just breaking the thermostat really counts as braking. It's not a project car until you. Matt always on Sloppy always says the first engine's free.
That's true. I keep tossing around the idea. There's a guy locally. For whatever reason, I've fallen in love with when Ford. I don't know if you remember, they came out with that ad campaign about 305 horsepower and 30 miles to the gallon for their V6 Mustang, like 2011, I think is when it rolled out.
Okay.
But there's a guy.
I've watched TV since like the 90s.
Ah, okay.
Yeah.
Well, that was like a big messaging campaign. And I think what happened was, the EcoBoost got so big, that program got so big that this motor kind of got lost. But it was actually for 3.7 liters of a motor, these things wrap out.
Was that their EcoBoost motor, the 4-cylinder turbo?
Well, the 4-cylinder turbo replaced this one.
Oh, okay.
So it kind of it only had like a 4 years.
It was just a V6, right?
Yeah.
Okay. Yeah. My sister bought one of those for her daughter. As a first car, and the engine smoked. She brought it up here, and we swapped the engine with one of those. It was a pretty nice engine. It made sense.
Yeah,
it's the one that has that funny intake manifold on the top.
Yeah.
Real easy.
Yeah, so they make 305 horsepower and wrap out at about 8,500 RPM. And so I always thought, as light as the Fairmont is, there's a person locally who has wrecked one of those. I was like, that would be a pretty cool. Because it's got to be.
I think you should be able to pick that engine up relatively cheap.
Right. And so it'd have I don't know, just that thought of getting really good fuel mileage, being super unsuspecting, and being really quick and nimble. That I don't know. There's a lot of appeal to that. So maybe
Yeah,
I
I think
should just go blow.
we all have like things that we don't like. Like it's not that we don't want to get into it, it's just we're unfamiliar with it, and it's always kind of like for me it's transmissions. I don't two transmissions and electronics. I don't like either of those. So that for me that's been a big struggle with the Phoenix, is just trying to motivate myself to like do the ECU and the wiring and figuring that all out. That was kind of a struggle.
Well, and that reminds me of there's this other channel, and I wish I had their name written down. I just started following them this week, but they did a Coyote swap in a like 68 Ford F100,
Wow.
and they put together like a kit to do these swaps. And they talked about though, but they like to leave, like if there's someone out there that's already good at doing something like tuning, they're
Right.
like, why would we not lean on that person? Like we can do all the other stuff. We can give you a recommendation on the headers, the engine motor mounts and all that stuff and package this deal, but we're not going to do near as good a job as, so I'm kind of like that, like you are with electronics, that I'm like, it was when I was in high school still. I think it was in high school. I tried to put electronic cooling fans on my Ford F-150. I bought the cheapest wiring harness that had no directions, and I bought the cheapest like too small wire gauge. And as soon as I hooked the battery up, smoke just started burning that insulation off the wire and heading towards the cab of my truck.
Yeah.
I was like, you know what?
A quick lesson in amps.
Yeah, this is not me. So
right.
Electronics, I just assume I'd rather have somebody.
Yeah, I mean, it really kind of stifles you in a lot of ways. I mean, whatever your weak area, like if it's welding, you might have an idea of like, hey, I want to put together a turbo kit for whatever. And it's like, man, but I don't know how to weld. How do I find a welder? Do I trust them? And it's the same thing. Like with me, it's the same thing with like, hey, I want to put a turbo on the Volvo with its current configuration. Oh, okay. Well, the fabrication's simple, but it's like, man, then I really have to spend a lot of time educating myself about, how to hook up a micro squirt or whatever the case might be.
Yeah. And then you're just like, well, why am I spending way too much? There's a more efficient, easier way to get to the end goal. Sometimes you have to remind yourself of that too.
Right.
Because, well, Mike, I appreciate you coming on, and it's been a joy to talk to you. It's been really fun. You're even better in person. Of course, I appreciate your sense of humor watching your videos, just kind of your train of thought.
I appreciate somebody does.
Well, and thank you again for your service in the Army as well. So.
Absolutely my pleasure. Well, thanks. I appreciate joining you, and let's wish everybody a happy New Year one more time. And I guess that's it. Yeah.
Yeah. Well, happy New Year to everybody. And Mike, just maybe to close it out one last time, let's maybe just tell people where they can find you, not only on YouTube, but maybe Instagram and Facebook as well.
So if you just Google Monkey Fab or type Monkey Fab into anything, it'll pop up with this logo here with the monkey. So, but the website itself is monkeyfabgarage.com, and go check it out. Lots of little fabrication doodads on there. But mostly, if you want to follow my channel, it kind of runs two parallels. One's me teaching stuff like welding, which is my attempt to kind of give back. Like as someone mentioned, welding tips and tricks. If it wasn't for Jody, I'd never know how to weld. I learned from him, and that's the same kind of theory. Is I want to give back. And then the other vlog is just holding my own feet to the fire. So if you see stuff on Phoenix, it'll probably be me rambling like I am now, just cussing out my car. Yes.
Well, perfect. I couldn't have done a better send-off than that. So
all right.
I wanted to thanks everybody else in the chat. We had a pretty good show. Happy New Year, and that'll do it for this episode. Until next time, peace out.